I did let fear run me as a kid.
Mhm.
And I didn't stand up to the bullies, and I didn't ask out the women that I wanted to ask out. And I felt small, and I've regretted the things I didn't do. So
Mhm.
now when there's fear and I'm like, oh, I'm scared of that, I try and look for a way. What's a way that I can at least take a step towards it so that fear isn't running the show? And I want that for everybody.
Welcome to the Legacy in the Making show. I'm your host, LA's foremost success coach, Toni Marie Torrey. I interview leaders and influencers who've gone beyond the superficial markers of success and claimed true fulfillment by leveraging their positions to create positive and profitable changes in their businesses and beyond. They share their stories and offer real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience that translates into practical advice to apply to your own journey. I invite you to this injection of wisdom and inspiration so you can prevail and leave your own lasting legacy. Well, hello, legacy makers. I am so excited to introduce today's guest to you, David Wood, who is a fellow countryman. So you'll get to listen to two Australian accents today. He is, just such an amazing coach. So after a life as a consulting actuary for Fortune 100 companies, David built the world's largest coaching business and became #1 on Google search rankings for life coaching. And he has built an email list of 150,000 business owners. He's done things like sold $330,000 worth of products from the stage in 15 minutes. And he was voted into the Transformational Leadership Council, which is founded by Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul fame. David talks a lot about the fact that when he started working with entrepreneurs, he discovered that they had shiny object syndrome and that it's an epidemic amongst high performers. David coaches rock star business owners to double their revenue, achieve more in less time, and be a more extraordinary entrepreneur, partner, parent, and leader. And David, you are an extraordinary leader. I'm so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about you and how it is that you got to do what you do.
Well, thanks for that warm welcome, Toni. I grew up in a country town in Australia, and I was really good at math. I ended up coming top of my school, and it was like, what do you do? When you're really good at math? We figured accountancy would be the path. And then my mother was a teacher, and she'd been researching, and she found out about actuarial studies, and no one knew what it was. But we found out that they generally earned more money. It was a lot harder to qualify, and there was more prestige if someone actually knew what it meant. So, and then we found out that they were giving out scholarships for this too. So in the US, people rack up debt of like $100,000, $200,000 to go to college. Not only was college free when I went to college, but I got paid to go. And then I had the choice to work for that company if I wanted to at the end, or I could just keep the scholarship and go and work for someone else.
Wow, you're making a lot of Americans really jealous right now, David.
Yeah, we'll talk about privilege, right? So I come from a lot of privilege. And then I found out once I got to New York, I've got an office, and I'm 24 years old. I'm a consultant. I'm going to Sony Music, Exxon, and Ford, and Chanel. I'm like, this is incredible. I've got it made, but I wasn't really happy, and I was having trouble in my marriage. So someone recommended the Landmark Forum, and I went along, and I nearly didn't do it because they wore name tags and they smiled way too much. I'm like, I don't trust this, and I don't trust self-help in general. You're a bunch of weak-willed people who can't think for yourself, was my attitude. Fortunately, they cracked my heart open. They cracked my cynicism. And I realized there are people who actually devote their life to making the world better.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit my job. It took me 8 years to qualify as an actuary. which for people who don't know what it is, it's long-term financial projections, statistics, calculating insurance premiums, pension funds, superannuation premiums, like that. I quit that and I discovered the world of coaching, because when I was in that course, I coached somebody and changed their life overnight, and just watched her screw up her courage and do something that was terrifying to her, transformed her life overnight. I'm like, how do I get more of this? I want to do this. So I quit my job. I went into coach training, and I've been coaching since 1998. I love it. And it's hard to imagine doing anything else.
Yes, I can completely relate to that, given that I drink from the same well, and coaching is just such an empowering and gratifying role when you do get to change people's lives like that. So tell me, in terms of one of your biggest coaching experiences, what is it that you are most proud of in this business?
I'm proud of, and it's deeply satisfying to me to be able to hold space for somebody, whatever they're going through. I felt very, very proud when Satyan Raja, who was one of David Data's trainers, said to someone interviewed him about my coaching, and he said, I think David could hold space for anything.
I know Satyan, and he's a very, very wise man. So if he said that about you, I know it's true.
He has $1 million clients, and he's deep into martial arts. And so if Satyan says something like that, I pay attention. And I think he's right, because I've been to the depths. I feel like I've been to the depths of human experience, and I've experienced things where I didn't know if I was going to make it through. And I'm including anxiety and depression. I have a lot of space for whatever someone's going through. So as an example, I have a wonderful business client who's got a really great online store, and she came to me mainly because she wanted to improve the bottom line and make more money. But anyone who comes to me knows that we're going to look at the whole person, not just the money. So when she got diagnosed with cancer, and she was understandably freaking out, I did a special coaching session with her and her husband, and held space for them as they wrestled with this. And we ended the session with, so what game are you going to play now? Given this circumstance, given that you don't know how long you're going to live, what are you going to do? And it was just such a privilege to be able to do that for them. So I think I'm most proud of those moments in coaching, when someone's really losing it, maybe falling apart, don't want to show the rest of the world that, but they're willing to reveal that to me, so I can hold their hand as they go through it, because I think we could all use that from time to time.
That is for sure. And like you, I've had the honor and privilege of taking a number of clients through the cancer journey. And it is not an easy one for sure. And there are still gifts to be found. You know, one of the things that I talk to my clients about a lot is that circumstances are neutral, and it's what we make of those circumstances and how we think about those circumstances that really creates our experience in life.
Yeah. You know, I just got something. I don't think I've said this before, but as you were saying that, what I realized is that suffering is completely optional. Pain, maybe not, but the suffering is completely optional. And I still suffer. I still suffer often. It seems to be getting shorter and shorter, the periods where I suffer. And I think the only thing that can have us suffer is what we're believing. Well, I grew up thinking that everything was external, and my life would be good if I had great circumstances. If I had money and a wife and, you know, good health and whatever, then I'd be really happy. Well, it doesn't seem to work that way. You have people with nothing who are happy, and people with everything who kill themselves. Right. So I finally realized it's really about what we're believing. And what I got while you were speaking was, it's like we are in the Matrix from the movie The Matrix. It's like we are in a matrix of our own creation, which is our thoughts and what we're thinking. here's a tiny example. Last night, I got a bit annoyed with my men's group because there's only 4 of us in the group, and one by one, all 3 of them bailed on the meeting that we had. And I was there, ready, shown up, and then the last guy just said, "Oh, well, let's cancel." And so I got annoyed. And then as I investigated it, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I holding on to? What do I care? Now that we're not doing that, I can go and play chess with my buddy, and I don't care if they rescheduled. I don't care. But there was part of my ego that was just trying to hold on, and like, I need to fight for something. I need to be respected. I need all this. So we are in our own matrix, and that's great while ever things are good, right? While ever we're enjoying it, that's fine. But if we're ever suffering, we can do some hacking of the matrix. We can do some hacking of our own thinking, and it's hard to do yourself. And so that's one of the things I get to do for my clients, because I'm outside of them. They can't read the label from inside the jar, but I'm outside. I can see how they got there to the suffering. And so I can often help them find a way out.
Yeah, I so agree. And one of the metaphors that I share with my clients is, because, like, what's the difference between talking to a coach and, say, talking to a friend? So what I say is that typically when you're talking to a friend, you're expecting the friend to jump in the pool with you. You're there like gasping for air, trying to stay afloat. And when you tell a friend about it, they're going to jump in there with you. What a coach does is stays outside the pool on the sidelines and gets you to the edge or the ladder or whatever, so you can climb out of the pool.
Yeah, that's very true. It either gets you to the edge or helps you find a way to get yourself out of that pool. Right. That's absolutely true. I mean, yeah, and not to say that it's dispassionate. Like, no. I think you're absolutely right. There's empathy, and like, oh, that must be really rough. Mm-hmm. And now, once we've really acknowledged that, and we've acknowledged the feelings and named them, then are you ready to start moving towards the edge of the pool? Let's do it. But you're right. Generally, my job is not to buy into the sad story.
Right.
And be like, oh, I can't believe she did that to you and whatever. I mean, maybe I do have some outrage, and maybe that'll come too, but I'm not going to wallow in that. I'm always looking for what is going to be best for you. And sometimes what's best is to take responsibility for something. Mm-hmm. And your friends may not say to you, well, what can you be responsible for here? Is there anything you did that might have led to this that you can, because then you've got some more power. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That is a difference with coaching. Good analogy.
Yeah. And I loved what you were saying earlier about the suffering component too. One of the things I say to my client is that about not suffering over the suffering. Suffering in life is somewhat inevitable. Pain is somewhat inevitable. But then what happens is that we suffer, and then we get hooked into suffering over the suffering. And that's really the part that we have control over.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So there are cycles and little loops that we get into. So we might be really upset about, I don't know, say a breakup. And then we could get upset that we're upset about the breakup, particularly if we're on the spiritual path. We're like, I shouldn't be upset about this. And so then we beat ourselves up about that. At some point, you've just got to go, all right, this is how it is. I don't like what's happening. I am suffering right now. Oh my God. If I suffered, Tony, I'll tell you, I did ayahuasca last year, the plant medicine, the jungle stuff. Uh-huh. And I've been told, some people told me it can be 6 hours of pure suffering. Oh my God, did I suffer? I was aware of it. I'm lying there going, I hate this and I want it to stop. And I know the way out is to stop seeking a way out. But this is the truth of it. I just hate this, and I'm just breathing, trying to get by every second.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes that's what you got. At least I had the comfort of knowing there was a timer on it. Mm-hmm. Like eventually this would wear off and I would get back to some kind of a normal. But well,
you're braver than I. It's like I have friends and colleagues that swear by it and have had amazing experiences, but I don't know. I think actually, when I was a teenager, I had my wisdom teeth taken out and they put me on morphine, and I had the worst trip. Snakes, weird, crazy, scary things going on. And as a 15-year-old, that was not anything that I at the time had any perspective on. So anything that's inclined to alter your psyche in that way, I steer clear of.
Well, that's a wonderful example about having a bad morphine trip and snakes and whatever coming out at you. So I think that's a great metaphor for life. Sometimes it could be someone who's angry with you. Your landlord could be, chewing you out. And that's like the same version of the snakes. And we've got a choice. We can freak out about that. I go, oh my God, there are snakes and this shouldn't be happening. I took a substance that I'm sure is legal in some country, not necessarily legal in the US. So I won't say where I was when I took it. But I took this one substance and I was seeing visions. Like when I was on ayahuasca, I saw really dark visions. Like I saw, I won't even say what it was. And I watched it and I realized I could really freak out about this. But instead I said, really? That's what you've got for me. That's what you want me to see. Babies dying. That's what you got. All right. And I kept saying, show me. Show me, show me. And it was so much easier welcoming that and walking into it. And I have had something similar with snakes crawling and my food crawling and whatever stuff like that. And it's been wonderful to be able to say, all right, out of all the things you could show me in the world, this is what you want me to see right now. Okay, bring it. And I think that's a really great way when we can to approach life and business and relationships, whatever's happening. All right, this isn't what I would have chosen. I have a preference for something else, but since this is what we've got, bring it.
I think one of the great lessons from those kinds of experiences, not that I think I had it when I was 15, but having gone through some other transformational experiences, is that we get to really experience ourselves as the observer, as having that part, your part that's saying, bring it, even though all these other things are happening in your experience. I think that's one of the most powerful lessons in life, when we realize that we can actually step back from whatever it is that's going on and observe and make different choices around what it is that we're perceiving is happening.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've talked about, David, is that with your work with various different founding CEOs, and we have a lot of founding CEOs that listen to this podcast because, of course, I work with those folks too. And you've talked to me about two things. One is that you've noticed that a lot of them, and I know I've experienced it myself, have shiny object syndrome. And then the other thing that we wanted to talk about today is courage. So I'll let you pick which one you want to go first with.
Okay, great. Before I pick which one, for anyone watching the video, I love the fact that my green smoothie is disappearing and becoming transparent because I'm using a green screen. So Zoom is actually like just removing the entire smoothie every time I take a sip of it.
That's really funny.
Which
I
is
thought you were
fun.
drinking water.
Right. It looks like water to you. I think I'm going to skip the shiny object syndrome in favor of courage. Shiny object syndrome is basically we keep flitting from one thing to another over a 12-month period, over a week period, and even over a day or even over an hour. We could be like, oh, I'll go and do this and I'll send this message to someone and let me check email. And it's entertaining. It's very entertaining. But if you really want to double revenue and you want to double your time off, we can't afford to do that. The secret to overcoming shiny object syndrome is to really work out what matters to you. And that's over 12 months, 3 months, 7 days, and the next hour. You work out what matters and what is not going to matter for that period of time. Mm-hmm. So it involves some discipline. And I'm happy we can give away a cheat sheet. I've got a little download with the steps to take to do that. But I think way more fun to talk about for me. I'm just such a fan of courage and overcoming fear. And one reason is because it's important for results. If we want to make more money, want more time off, we want better relationships, we want a better life, we need to find our courage.
Mm-hmm.
And the other reason is I want everybody that when that time finally comes and we're on our deathbed and we're looking back over our life, I want us to be able to say, I gave it all. I gave it everything. I didn't play small. I didn't let fear run me. I didn't take stupid risks like driving without a seatbelt. That's just stupid. There's no profit in it. Or riding a motorbike without a helmet. I wasn't stupid, but I took risks. I risked looking silly. I risked hearing no. I never let that stop me. That I want people to have that sensation that they fully gave everything.
I love that. And I think that it is so important. And I've definitely been through my own journey when it comes to courage. And I think a lot of what we need to do is address our childhood wounds and step into whatever fear they've generated, because oftentimes that really is where our calling is. They're actually hints and way showers. So for instance, in my history, because you probably know this, growing up in Australia, it was a little wilder and less politically correct than I think it has been here in the US. And so for me, I had a teacher who taped my mouth shut with sticky tape twice and sat me in front of the classroom for an hour or so with my mouth taped shut. And so for me, one of my growing edges, somewhere where I really have to muster up a lot of courage, is to speak, to be seen and heard, to do things like go out and give public speeches, to do things like have this podcast where I'm seen and heard, because there's still part of me where there's that little girl that's going, warning, Will Robinson, warning, this isn't a safe thing to do. What's an example out of your life, David, where you've really had to muster some courage?
When I did the Landmark Forum and then the subsequent courses, they were really big on completing your past. So finding out where you've got charged with someone you resent, someone you hate, or maybe even someone you felt guilty that you did something to them, kind of like 12-step programs. Mm-hmm. I would imagine they're like, go and confront that stuff. And I said, hell no. I had to make a list of everybody from my past that I didn't like or resented or hated. And one of them was a bully from high school. And we used to be friends. And then he kind of pushed me around a bit and would one-up me in class. And I just always lost in that interaction and felt humiliated. And the coach said, all right, call him. I'm like, no, I'm not. Are you kidding me? And she said, why? And I said, I'm worried he's going to think I'm a complete idiot for calling him 20 years later and the fact I've been holding on to this and whatever. And she said, then lead with that. And that gave me access to calling him. I'm like, I could do that because that was true. Mm-hmm. And I called him and I said, I'm so worried you're going to think I'm a complete idiot for calling you after all this time. And that really worked. He was very open. He said, oh, well, tell me, what do you got? What's going on? So I told him, I just shared my experience and I said, look, I'm letting it go. And I just wanted to let you know, I don't need anything from you. And he said the most amazing thing, and this is a guy I'd hated for years. He said, what could I say or do now to help us move forward? Wow. And it was transformational for me because in my matrix of thinking, this guy was a jerk. And now it's like, wow, he's a caring human being. That was one of the harder conversations I've ever had to have. I've had harder ones. Mm-hmm. Some I speak about publicly, some I don't. I keep private, but really terrifying. One that could have sent me to prison. Wow. For something I'd done, even though I was a minor at the time. Minors can still be prosecuted sometimes. So I went and confessed to someone. I said, I'm sorry. How can I make this right? I could have been prosecuted. So I've really faced some scary ones. Now, people listening, I'm not saying you should go this far. I didn't do this overnight. It took me a long time. It took me a lot of coaching to get to the point. And I've realized, there are still some things that I may not be willing to do because there may not be enough upside in it. But I'm here to encourage you to have more of those conversations, because I think 9 times out of 10, there will be some profit in it, maybe financial profit, but growth profit. There'll be something for you. Even if it doesn't go well the first time, you might have round 2 the next week. Hey, can I have another shot at that? I don't think I had a good job. So I think this came from the fact that I did let fear run me as a kid. And I didn't stand up to the bullies, and I didn't ask out the women that I wanted to ask out. And I felt small, and I've regretted the things I didn't do. So now when there's fear and I'm like, oh, I'm scared of that, I try and look for a way. What's a way that I could at least take a step towards it so that fear isn't running the show? And I want that for everybody.
I especially like your hint there. Really, this is like if anyone takes something away from this conversation, that piece about, okay, you're going to have a conversation with someone and you're worried about what it is that they might think. Opening with what you anticipate they will think, that is a really great hint for how to go about initiating one of those conversations. And then the other thing that inspired me about what you were saying there too, it reminded me of a quote that I used to have up on my wall. I don't need to have it on my wall anymore because it's so ingrained. And it's that regret for the things you did can be tempered by time. It's regret for the things you did not do that's inconsolable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there are some things I wish I could take back that I've done, but I think there's a much higher list of, what if I'd at least tried? What if I'd at least asked? And in a business sense, is there a celebrity that you'd like to ask to endorse your product, or a celebrity that you'd like on your podcast? Or are there, there must be at least 10 people you can think of who might make great customers or clients that you could call up and ask. There's so many different ways we can find our edge and ride our edge. In our relationships, are there some confessions you could make and take a risk for the chance of getting closer to that person? Is there a reveal you could make about yourself? I'm on a dating app right now, and what I offer on the dating app is I say, hey, if you reach out, I'll give you a profound question. And so sometimes women write and they're like, I want my question. I want my profound question.
I love that.
And so just yesterday I wrote back to someone. I said, okay, what don't you want me to know about you?
Ooh, that's getting juicy right there.
Yeah, it was great. And she, that'll sometimes send people running, or it'll bring people closer. And she shared about how deeply competitive she is and how embarrassed she is, and she's trying to work on it. But that's a part where she has some shame. I'm like, thank you. I like knowing that about you. So there's so many different ways we can find our edge and find our courage. And again, here's an exercise that I highly recommend. You grab a piece of paper and a pen and write up the top, what would I do if I was fearless?
Such a
and
good
you can
question.
have maybe on one side of the page, you write everything in your business, what you would do if you were fearless. And then the other side could be in your relationships. What would I do if I was fearless? Don't go and do it all overnight, but you might want to circle a few things. I like to say, what if you were just 30% more courageous? For the next 30 days, try it on and see what that's like. Hey, you'll stumble. You'll skin your knee from time to time. You might get some people mad at you. But as they say, if you got no one who's mad at you, then you're not truly living.
Yes, ain't that true? And it is so timely because I actually have time scheduled on my calendar for Sunday to set up a dating profile. And so I love your questions, and I don't know whether I'll use those questions, but it certainly is prompting me to consider what questions I might ask people in order to get some sense of who they are and what their character is. And those are great.
I'll go you one better. I created an app specifically to provide deep questions. It's a free app. You can pay to upgrade if you want more questions, but it's called Get Real, a question game to go deeper. Available on Apple and iTunes, Apple and Android. And it's really cool. You can bust it out at a bus stop and say, hey, while we're waiting for 10 minutes, there's this question game. You want to do a question. You can pull it out at the checkout and ask the checkout man or woman a really great question. And, you could bust out, if you could travel back in time, what would you say to your 20-year-old self? Right? There's amazing questions in that app, and it's great around the dinner table, at home. Use it with your kids. I'm a coach, and it's not natural for me to dive deep with somebody. It's weird for me to go, tell me about your childhood. But if I say, hey, I got this app, it's a question game, you want to do a round or two, it's almost always been a very positive experience where we, sometimes we'll be in tears and feel so connected. So
that sounds fantastic. Give us the name of it again so we can make sure that
Get Real. Get real, baby. Yeah. Get Real, a question game to go deeper.
That is just gorgeous. I'm really excited to check that out. We used to have a book called If. That was just a little small book. And inside the If book, there were a lot of amazing, pithy questions. And we used to do that around the dinner table when my daughter was younger. Because I think you're right. One of the things that I loved about the question that you shared, that you asked that girl on the dating app, what don't you want me to know about you, is that I can see how that immediately built more intimacy. Like when she was prepared to reveal that, now you guys are in a real relationship type conversation, of getting to know you type conversation that goes far beyond the surface. So this sounds really exciting.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. What other gems have you got for us?
What other gems? Well, that's a big question. We've covered being 30% more courageous. We've covered very briefly shiny object syndrome, and we've covered Get Real, a way to get closer to everybody. I will say something else. This is more of a teaser, but I spend a lot of my time working with entrepreneurs who want their business to do way better. And I only work with people who are already successful. So you're up and running. But something I found super useful, because people often want, well, what's the best way to double revenue? And what I found is it's different for each person. So the plan for Bill isn't going to be the same as a plan for Mary, because Bill could be in a different position in his business. So something that I found super useful and important is to assess yourself in each of 9 areas and just find out where you're strong and where you're weak. And then the areas where you're weak, you'll pick 3 of those. And over the next few months, you become strong in them. That's how to double revenue in the shortest time available. With the giveaway at the end of this interview, I'll give access to a free training where I'll take you by the hand and take you through each of these steps, and you can assess yourself and create your own plan for doubling revenue.
Very generous of you, David. Thank you so much. So I have one more question for you, which is, what is the legacy that you want to leave from this lifetime?
People being more at peace and liking themselves more.
Well, and I think you're an excellent example and way shower of exactly that. So thank you for that and for being willing to make that contribution to the world.
I'm on a quest to constantly like and love myself as much as possible and to be at peace with everything that's happening, and then ideally even enjoy it. And as I learn more about how to do that, I love to share it. I'm like, all right. So sometimes with my clients, I'll be sharing something from this morning or something from yesterday, something that's really current and that I'm still working on. It doesn't have to be something that I discovered 20 years ago.
Yes, I completely agree with you there. Oftentimes, what I find for me, I feel like I get a lot of guidance when I'm in coaching sessions with my clients. And oftentimes, I will have just discovered or remembered or formulated something for myself like that very morning. And all of a sudden, it's something that's really relevant to my client in their session. And I just think that when we step into this path of tapping into what I call your innate wisdom, that synchronicity and that alignment between what you want and how you can be of service just really becomes very cohesive. So, David, this has been amazing. It's so much fun to find out more about you and your amazing expertise. What is the best way for people to find you? And then if you want people to go check out this freebie, I know we'll definitely put the link in the show notes, but if you want to share a URL or something as well, that's great too.
Yeah, thanks. It's just one link, which will take you to all the goodies. I'll give you guys a cheat sheet for how to double revenue in the shortest amount of time. It's a 1 or 2 page PDF. So you can go through and check off the ones you've already got mastered. And then highly recommend you take the 35-minute training, which is a preview of my Samurai program. And it'll help you create your plan for doubling revenue. It'll also tell you if you're a fit for my 8-week program or not. So you can get these at myfocusgift.com. And then if you want to get on my mailing list, I send out a couple of videos every week. And all of those are at myfocusgift.com.
That is fantastic, David. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us here today. I know that people are going to get amazing benefit from this conversation, as I have.
My pleasure.
Always wonderful to talk to a fellow countryman. There's something about us expats, we're scrappy.
That's true. It's true. We're scrappy.
I'm glad you tuned in to the Legacy in the Making show. If you're genuinely interested in creating positive change in your business or your life or on a more global scale, I invite you to connect with me at TonyMarie.com. That's Tony with a Y, Marie with 2 E's. When you get there, you'll find the Path to Purpose Master Plan, the truly brilliant method to make sure you're clear on why you're here. This is the absolute critical foundation to honing your instincts and leaving a legacy you'll be proud of. You can also find out about the Innate Wisdom Business Council, which is an opportunity to evolve your vision in the company of like-minded leaders, and much, much more. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you next time.